Hello, welcome to your probability, more specifically the how many more section. In other words, we're going to be comparing the differences between theoretical and experimental, or also known as relative frequency, in an event. How do I compare probabilities? That's our big question. We are going to use the same heads and tails scenario from the very beginning of probability, in which I had heads 4 out of the 10 times and tails 6 out of the 10 times, and that data you can see right there. What we're going to do is take this and use this information to compare information. So the theoretical probability of getting heads we know is 1/2. The experimental probability of getting heads was 4 out of 10, which we also assumed was 2 out of 5 if we reduced it down. So we need to compare these. In order to compare them, we need to be talking about the same numbers here. So if I am going to go with the 4 out of the 10 here, because that's what I had 4 out of the 10 trials. So if I take my theoretical, I can make that be out of 10. In other words, you're finding a common denominator between the 4/10 and the 1/2. The common denominator is 10. That means I have 5 out of 10 theoretically. So then when I go to compare this information, I'm going to have the question that you see right here. It says, how does this compare to how does the experimental probability compare to the theoretical probability? Or how does the relative frequency compare to the theoretical probability? And so the question that how you're going to answer this is that I would need to have gotten heads one more time in order for it to equal the theoretical probability. Okay, that's one observation. There are multiple, so that's one. Another observation here is that the experimental probability of heads, and I'm abbreviating here, but in real life we would use complete sentences. Experimental probability of heads is less than the theoretical. And obviously this is all situation based. It depends on your information, your data. So you can do that. You would also relative frequency, let's tie that in. 4 divided by 10, my relative frequency then would be 0.4. And so I can talk about that as well. And I know my theoretical probability is 0.5. So I can also say that my relative frequency is 4/10, and theoretical probability is 0.5, and I'm running out of room, but you would also then continue, which is a difference of 1/10. Your turn. A spinner has 8 equal sections, and 3 of them are green. Billy has spun a total of 120 times and got green 30 times. How does the relative frequency and experimental probability compare to the theoretical probability? That's the question you're going to answer. In order to do that, you need to identify your theoretical. You need to identify or write out your experimental probability. And then you need to compare. And the way you compare is just what I did in my example, is finding a common denominator, comparing what actually happened, how many more, how many less to reach your theoretical, what the relative frequency differences were, things like that. And you're going to write about that. We will be discussing them in class, so make sure you have complete sentences. You should have probably 2 or 3 sentences that are complete, comparing your data. That is the end of the video. I look forward to hearing your comparisons in class. Thanks for watching.